Before the school calls, before the diagnosis, before things fall apart, the brain leaves clues. Over the last 3 decades, I've done more than 10,000 brain maps and worked one on one with thousands of kids struggling with attention, anxiety, mood, behavior. And again, 5 simple questions reveal which kids are at risk for long term mental health struggles. And really, there's a difference between kids that are occasionally dysregulated or really stuck there. And we're going to go into which are these questions that I always wind up doing in these intakes, which all know I'm not going to be doing anymore. But I want to share them with you so that you can feel better about the path that you're taking. And these questions reveal difficulties years before anybody labels your kid ADHD or has anxiety or some kind of behavioral disorder. And these aren't personality traits, they're nervous system signals. And most parents are told things like they'll grow out of it, or it's just a phase, or that's normal kid behavior, or sometimes the opposite. But what parents are actually seeing are early dysregulation or regulation patterns. And when the nervous system stays stuck in a stress mode, you know what happens. Flexibility drops, recovery slows. These are kids that really struggle to recover from upset, disappointment, being really reactive, because all kids have temper tantrums. That's normal. But it's that recovery. These are kids that lack emotional resilience and never fully develop in those areas. You're always going in and giving that scaffolding, that help, but it never seems to be internalized. And that's when struggles compound over time. Let's talk about the brain science behind regulation and some of these issues that I'm seeing that I'm really trying to share with you to prevent these issues from being long-term issues. A regulated nervous system, what can it do? It can pause, recover, it adapts. Dysregulated nervous system overreacts, gets stuck a lot. They can't reset. And mental health struggles don't appear overnight. If they do appear overnight, go and see somebody immediately. It could be PANS, it could be a psychotic break. Something could have happened to your kid, a victimization of some kind, but they develop over time. They build quietly when stress stays high and recovery stays low. Let's talk about that early warning system. These behaviors aren't problems to eliminate. They are dashboard lights like, hello, I need some help. And that's what the brain and nervous system is showing us. When we ignore them, the system strains. We support them, the brain rewires. We've always got to regulate first. You know that. Let's talk about these 5 predictive nervous system signals. Number 1, low frustration tolerance. It's a biggie. And what do parents see? Parents see explosive reaction, giving up quickly, intense emotional responses to often things that are tiny. They could be every time they face a larger challenge. But why is it so predictive? So, low frustration tells us about the emotional brain. Is it overreactive? And the thinking brain, is it working? Is it connected? Do we have problem solving, executive functioning skills or not? Of course, this is predictive, but it really these questions all give us a clue on where we need to put our elbow grease. When things aren't well connected yet, what it's going to be hard to do for them is pause, reflect, use coping skills. These kids often grow into teens who struggle with anxiety, impulse control, emotional volatility. In the brain, what do we see? We see overactive areas in the emotional centers. We see underactive regulation networks. Those are the neural networks of the brain that are essentially the superhighway that connect everything. And these kids can have both overactivity and underactivity, but they just don't have that braking system that gets them to pause and deal with whatever that stressor is. Number two, this is a really predictive behavior that I see kids struggle. And it's a hard one because a lot of kids are facing this. It's restrictive eating. What parents see isn't just eating a few safe foods, right? It's strong reactions to textures, smells, change. These are the kind of kids that no matter what you're doing, they just don't want to try those foods. Why is it so predictive? Restrictive eating often signals a nervous system that experiences the world as unsafe. These kids frequently have sensory sensitivity, heightened stress responses, rigid coping pattern. And then there's a nutritional layer as well, of course. So limited diets deprive the brain of nutrients. And those are needed for calm focus and emotional balance. Nobody wants to talk about food and they think, just getting something in powers up that engine, but it's not the case. And so I will often see this in the history of the kids that I work with who later develop mental health issues. Now, these are not black and white. These are things that I've seen in working with over thousands of kids. What's underneath a kid who's a restrictive eater? It's a kid who's stuck in sympathetic dominance, always ready to fight, flight, or freeze. And in their brain, you're seeing heightened sensory areas in the brain that are just more reactive to things that are sensory. That's why they often respond to occupational therapy and sensory work, which is very surprising for a lot of parents. All my OTs that listen, I love you. You do a great job. We certainly see it more in clinical conditions like autism, ADHD, areas of neurodivergence. But that doesn't always mean you're going to have problems. It's just much more common. The third area that I often see problems with is difficulty transitioning, especially between activities. It's an increasing challenge to transition in our digital world and so reliant on devices, both at home and in school. But it's more than that. And what we're seeing is that these kids will have meltdowns. They will switching between tasks much more than you would expect. And for longer, you see resistance to change, you see getting stuck, you see difficulty actually learning the transitions, missing the cues and knowing what to do. So why is it so predictive? Transitions require executive functioning skills and cognitive flexibility. And we need those in everyday life, not just your job, not just your school, but in relationships, in going to the store, you name it, you need to be able to, with executive functioning, you need to be able to see what's coming and plan for it. And cognitive flexibility is that ability that is you are can do things differently. You can switch gears. You can change a plan. We need that. For those of us that are mothers, what would we do without cognitive flexibility? We would stress out. And that's why it's such a predictive component for kids that are struggling and could be struggling with mental health in the future. Kids who struggle here often grow into teens who resist change, struggle with uncertainty. These are those kind of kids that ask you a lot of repeated questions because they hate uncertainty. They have rigid emotional patterns. They in their brain, dysregulation is in the frontal networks tied to planning, organization, and adaptability, right? Those executive functioning centers aren't working as well. Remember, executive functioning is a learned skill. You are not born with it. So I want to give you hope for it. And you go back and listen to the other episodes on executive functioning. I love to talk about it. And I wish everybody would integrate that into their parenting. The next predictive area or question is, do they have poor recovery from upset? So after being upset, what parents will see is big reactions that last a long time, trouble calming, even after the trigger is long gone. And why is it so predictive? Recovery speed is one of the clearest indicators of nervous system health because slow recovery means the parasympathetic nervous system or the break, that's that calm hot tub state, that break is not engaging. And we need to be able to go into a parasympathetic state. Otherwise, life is going to chew us up and spit us out. It's a strong predictor of anxiety, depression, stress intolerance. Could be a list of other clinical issues. And later on, what you see in these teens is a lot of clinical issues. So in the brain, you're seeing high beta, which is worry, hyper arousal, being overstimulated, and low alpha, which is a really nice feel good brainwave that helps you to calm and reset, helps you to sleep, helps you to not be so irritated. It's a really nice brainwave. It's one of my favorite. I do it a lot. And actually, the PEMF puts you into an alpha state, which is so cool. So, the number five question is your kid a poor problem solver? And skills under stress, what are we seeing? What are you actually seeing when you have to problem solve? Because it's so critical. I think one of the things that I see that parents get so irritated with their kids is they're not good problem solvers. So what they're seeing is, I can't, they're seeing shutting down, they're seeing oppositional behavior when challenged, especially when they feel incompetent in any way, they feel criticized in any way. You're seeing this in your reactive attachment disorder kids. So it's very predictive because problem solving only works when the brain feels safe and it's regulated. You're not going to have good problem solving skills when the frontal lobes go offline, which they do in a sympathetic dominant state. Kids who can't think through challenges under stress often develop chronic frustration, learned helplessness. These are our kids that you might say have low motivation, but if they just have learned helplessness, they've shut down. You have more power struggles with these kinds of kids. And in their brain, you're seeing disrupted frontal connectivity. It doesn't work as well. That's that thinking brain, and it can't coordinate under pressure. What do we have to think here? When we see you're hearing me, you're watching, and you're thinking, wow, I got a lot of yeses here. It's not a phase. It's a signal that the brain and body are under chronic stress. And at a minimum, your kid, or maybe you're saying yes to this for yourself, you're running on empty. And what we have to think about is they are struggling not just with everyday life, their actual electrical circuits of the brain, nutrition, all those things aren't working. But here's the biggest part. When we calm the nervous system, improve nutrition, support co regulation, strengthen executive functioning, we don't just reduce meltdowns, we change the trajectory of mental health. That is huge. Instead of believing that a pill's going to fix it, that's not the way it works. That's not what I've seen in these 3 decades. You have to regulate first and then come in with those skills. And they stick when you're regulated, not when you are on some type of ADD medication or something else. Now, listen, this isn't about shame. You know how I feel about medication. It should never be the first line of defense. We have a developing brain. Why wouldn't we do simple things to regulate the nervous system? Which is what, oh, it's on this side, which is what my book, The Dysregulated Kid, is all about. It's going to be easy, accessible, and anybody can do it. And 90% of the things in there are free, meaning every single person has access to the tools that are in that book. And why is that important? Because we need to break the cycle of overwhelm. And that's only going to happen when we what, kids? Regulate first. You got to think my kid's behavior is not defiance. It's data from the nervous system asking for support. Because remember, the A in comms is avoiding personalizing. So what are you going to do? You know, I'm all about the action step. Number one, ask yourself these 5 questions. Go back, listen, look at the notes, and honestly answer. Don't panic. But this is really about giving you this knowledge so that you can take early intervention. Because you know how many people come to me and say, coulda, woulda, shoulda, or I didn't push hard enough, I asked for help. And many of you do. When we intervene early, it's just a lot easier to change and it's faster. Now, if your kid's 27, it's never too late. Or this is about you. It's never too late. It's just we have shame, we have bad habits, we have stress compounded. And remember, healing is never that trajectory is a trending up stock market. But you have to do the work. You can't just magic wand it, and you know that, and that's why you're here. I want you to pick one area to support regulation this week. So go back to the 5 questions, really think, okay, my kid is a picky eater and I really feel like we got hangry behaviors. I feel like that's the area I want to tackle. Don't try to tackle all 5. If your kid has all 5, please find a licensed mental health provider. Yes, you can still buy the book. Yes, you can sign up for my Dysregulation Insider newsletter, listen to it, go back and binge listen to all the episodes. There's a lot of gems in there because I have had the privilege of helping thousands of people, and you get the benefit of that. And that's important. But when we start to regulate, we're going to look for differences in recovery time. So, intensity, frequency, and duration, not a miracle. So, is that for recovery time a little better? Maybe they only needed 3 reminders. Maybe they only slammed their door one time. Look for the micro because that's where parents give up. When we work with people one on one, it's a lot of holding through that because changing the nervous system is like a piece of cake when you actually do it. It's those behaviors attached to it. And us as parents, letting go of stuff, letting go of the idea that kids must be obedient and they must listen the first time I tell them. And I'm so mad. And I was having this great conversation the other day. I'm going to be on somebody's podcast, like it's an Italian podcast. And they're like, can you imagine if we said these things to our parents? And I was like, well, I was pretty saucy. Tony Philomena, I knew my limits, but I'm sure you're shocked that I wasn't the easiest kid in the world. We're not looking for perfection here. What we're looking for is gradual change. So mental health struggles don't just start in adolescence. They start when a stressed nervous system never learns how to recover. Let that sink in. So, for more science-backed tools like calm the nervous system, regulating first, right? Before you address those behaviors, right, go to our newsletter, the Dysregulation Insider. It's free, it shows up in your inbox every week. And if you're so inspired by this podcast, please leave a review because one review, especially on Apple, makes a huge difference. And they will actually share this podcast with other parents. And you know what? We need the world a calmer place. And this show and the book, The Dysregulated Kid, all of these things are going to help our world be more regulated. And we need that for ourselves and our kids. You got this, people. Pick one thing and focus on regulating.
Want more insights and solutions? Well, subscribe to our Dysregulation Insider and it will show up in your inbox every week.